Yesterday, I ran into someone I've known since high school, and when she asked about my podcasts, the topic of the metaverse came up. And if you check out some earlier More Than Blockchain episodes, you'll know that I'm very bullish on the potential of the metaverse, and really do feel that it will eventually be the place where we spend a lot of our time. In episode 15, I outline multiple ways in which I think the metaverse will transform our world. And in episode 17, I discuss how I think the metaverse will change the way we each individually think about self and our own identity. But are we already living in the metaverse? I mean, no matter where you're listening to this episode, if there are other humans around, they're likely looking into their phones. And maybe you're even looking into your phone too. So, are we already living in the metaverse? Maybe we are. I'm Jarrett Carpenter, and this is More Than Blockchain. The phrase metaverse was coined by author Neal Stephenson in his 1992 book Snow Crash, where he outlines the metaverse as being, quote, where humans, as programmable avatars, interact with each other and software agents in a three-dimensional virtual space that uses the metaphor of the real world, end quote. So, using this as our working definition of the metaverse, are we there yet? In order to answer this, I'd like to ask that we step back and objectively look at where we are now in the year 2022 from the lens and perspective of 10-year-old me from 1997. And I know, this is a weird thought experiment, but it's the one I conducted by myself, which inspired me to create this episode. As I mentioned in the intro, I recently spoke about the metaverse to a friend I've known since high school. And after speaking with her, I had to remind myself of three things. Number one, a majority of the world hasn't thought about the metaverse and its implications on our daily lives enough to be able to create podcasts about it. Number two, I really need to find a better way to communicate what I think about the metaverse to sound a lot less crazy. Number three, wait, are we already in the metaverse? And it was this third thing on the list, and this question that led me to Neal Stephenson's definition, which hopefully will allow me to more broadly ask and answer if we're already in the metaverse. So, returning to Stephenson's definition of the metaverse, he says it's, quote, where humans, as programmable avatars, interact with each other and software agents in a three-dimensional virtual space that uses the metaphor of the real world, end quote. Left out of this particular definition is that Stephenson also outlined in his book the use of goggles and personal terminals to engage in and explore in this 3D virtual space. It was from this point where I started to ask myself how I, as a 10-year-old child, would perceive the world in which we live today. And I wanted to do this just to try to understand some perspective. Because sometimes when we're walking around, this is just what's normal. Everyone is in their phones. So if you took a 10-year-old me and planted me in 2022, I'd likely be super alarmed at how far personal computing power and technology would have come. I mean, in the US and in Colombia, the two countries I've spent the most time in over the last 3 years, people live on their phones or their computers or their tablets. It's how we work, communicate, and even live life. If you don't believe me, put your phone down and go to the mall, grocery store, or just walk around a main busy street. People today literally walk FaceTiming with other people. I know because I've seen other people do it, and I've done it myself. With the internet and unlimited connection just a click of a button away, it's no surprise that we want to catch up with people virtually while we're on the treadmill, taking the dog for a walk, cooking, or whatever seemingly mundane IRL activity that we prefer to spice up by connecting with a friend via a video chat or just scrolling social media. People today will literally go thousands of miles to hike, visit a beach, or even a wonder of the world, all to spend time on their phone chatting with friends from home or surfing their social media feeds. You see, while we're clearly not living in a 3D virtual environment or the metaverse, are we living in something close to it? Referring back to the 10-year-old me walking around now, I'd be super shocked by how no matter where you go, people have their phones, and they're likely looking at them. Our smartphones are where we listen to music, it's where we look up things on the internet, connect to social media, Search for restaurants on Google Maps, and honestly, you get the picture because you're living it in real life or IRL in 2022. In 2022, to a 1997 10-year-old me or time traveler would look wild, as we humans now engage in a thing called social media, which didn't even exist as it does today. And yeah, sure, we had AIM, but that was just chat. Social media is where we connect with people all over the world via Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, among many other things, all via the internet, which even the internet in 1997 was still for many just a fad and nothing that would ever take hold, which is eerily similar to the attitude that the majority of the people have about the metaverse today. Oh, it's a fad, and it's not going to take hold. Oh, that's just something gamers are going to use. Or oh, that's just something rich people are going to use. And like Stevenson's definition, on many of these social media platforms, more and more people are using avatar-like or PFP, profile for proof, photos. And while the space isn't 3D like Neil's definition, it's increasingly becoming more and more augmented, or sliding towards augmented reality with new upgrades of filters and other types of video augmentation. One of my buddy's 5-year-old daughters loves to use the animal filters from his iPhone anytime I FaceTime him, which is AR, or augmented reality. So no, we're not living in the metaverse, or a fully 3D virtual space. But maybe we're in the waiting room, where the only thing we need to enter the actual metaverse are just advances in technology. Before not too long, the cell phone will probably be replaced by some type of headgear or glasses, maybe even contact lenses, that allow us to do everything we do on our phones, but just with the movements of our eyes and voice commands. I mean, I will be honest, and I might sound crazy again, but if I could wear some kind of cool glasses that would allow me to do everything that I currently do from my phone, just with eye movements and voice commands, well, I would definitely try it out. So while we may not be in Neil Stephenson's metaverse, our dependence and more than borderline addiction to our phones already has us living and spending time immersed, albeit via a screen and not virtual space, in what today is our metaverse, which is a mix of social media platforms, web browser native apps, smartphone apps, and video calling. And one day, kids, maybe even your kids' kids, won't understand why grandma or grandpa use smartphones so much. Just the same way that kids don't understand today landlines, VHS, cassette tapes, or even CDs. Because to a 10-year-old me or a time traveler from the late 90s, we all look way too connected to our digital lives via technology, which, dare I say it, might resemble the metaverse. Is this the metaverse, or are we living in a 2D metaverse? What do you think? Thanks for listening to this episode, and be sure to follow us on social media at More Than Blockchain. And if you'd like to learn more about the podcast or even contact me, visit morethanblockchain.xyz. Be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts and check out episodes 15 and 17 to learn more about how the metaverse could potentially transform our world. If you enjoyed this episode on the metaverse, please share the link with a friend, colleague, or family member. Thanks again for checking out the pod, and I'll see you next time.